Hey everybody, Nathan Ronen, CFA here with another update. This is actually applicable to all candidates in the CFA program, level 1, level 2, level 3. It's actually applicable to anybody that wants to listen to it. It's a little bit on the career side and, life side of things. I usually post every week or every other week a video on, the CFA exam and how to study for it and strategies and tips and all that. But a lot of times I get questions from candidates, and one of the questions I get from candidates are real life questions. People, especially in this market, in this environment, and over the years, are seeking careers, wanting to know, are they going in the right career? Are they looking for the wrong career? Sometimes people even get laid off or fired, and they want to know what to do. So they reach out, and I understand they want to reach out to people that might be of help to them. So this kind of question comes across my table very often. In fact, it just did about 2 or 3 days ago, and so I decided to put this little video together for those people that are in between jobs, or somebody that just got fired, or somebody that just got laid off, if you want to call it that, or somebody that's worried about getting laid off or fired. Here's something to think about. So if you're interested in listening to this further, please press the subscribe button, and you can also press the notifications bell so that you can continue to receive these updates as I post them on a weekly or bi-weekly basis on all forms of social media, including my YouTube channel, whatever, Instagram or Facebook or wherever else we put these things. So let's get to the chase here. I got a question, and I get this sometimes when I'm talking to candidates on the phone, just as a change of subject. Sometimes I get it as an email, and they want to know if I ever got fired from a job, or did I ever get laid off, or has that ever happened to me, and what did I do, and what did I learn from it? I think that's a very common issue these days, because when I'm going to be very honest here, when I was a younger guy, you mean you're not 22, Nathan? No, I'm not 22. When I first got out of college years back, there was a real big stigma about getting fired or getting laid off. And it was not only an issue of self-esteem, it just wasn't very common, okay? People got fired for a reason, okay? Because they embezzled, or they did something really wrong, or they lost the firm a lot of money. It was for an understandable cause. But then, if you told people, hey, I got fired, people would look at you and go, well, what's wrong with him? It was sort of the same kind of stigma that people had if they came from, back then, a divorced family where the mother and father were no longer living together. Yeah, there was a stigma years ago. I mean, things have changed. There was also a stigma about, not getting into a good college in the United States that you wanted to. There were all kinds of stigmas, but, over the years, the numbers have changed, the number of applicants have changed, things have changed. Even passing the CFA exam. When I was a level 1 and level 2 candidate, you didn't tell people, oh, I failed. You didn't post it, oh, I failed, or you told people kind of like a badge of honor. It wasn't that we had no self-esteem, we just didn't advertise these things. It wasn't something that you talked about. We also didn't talk about our incomes, what kind of salaries we were getting, or what our parents made, or we didn't talk about as much private information. So given these changes, did I ever get laid off or fired? Yes, and I'll be honest with you, more than once. Okay, there you go. All right, now, what happened? Okay, well, one of the major instances was I got let go from my job. It's been so many years, it doesn't really matter. It was for a major consulting firm. And I got let go from my job, not because I actually wanted to leave. I wasn't loving the job, but it was a good income for somebody coming out of college. And, it wasn't that I wanted to leave. But obviously the partners and the managers made that decision for me at that consulting firm. And when they called me in, or when that senior partner called me in, sat me down, and kind of nonchalantly told me that I was being let go, right then and there, I felt like it was a setback. Okay, I felt very deflated. I was in awe. I couldn't believe that they actually did it. In my heart, I knew I wasn't the best at information systems consulting, so eventually I accepted it. But when I got that news, it was crushing. And I felt it was a real big setback. But what I didn't realize at that time was that it wasn't really a setback. I would really call it more like a reset. It was a reset. okay? A reset in terms of my career path, in terms of my life, in terms of where I was going. And I actually learned a few lessons from that experience, even though it happened years ago. And then later on, when it happened again, that I was laid off for other reasons, or whatever, fired for other reasons, I remembered my lessons from the first time. So here are some of the lessons that I'm going to share with you, and hopefully you could take this to the bank. First of all, when you decide to work for a company, okay, and you're not the owner of the company, your job is basically borrowed. Okay, you're on borrowed time there. If you look at investment banks, you look at consulting firms, you look at all of those high-paying, firms, you will see that most of the people leave after a while, or they're fired or let go. Very few make it on to managing director or partner, and there's a lot of pressure with that, okay? And even at that point, partners or even sometimes, or managing directors can be let go. So your job is not a sure thing. It's borrowed. But the skills that you actually learn on the job, like I did, those are yours to keep. So when I got let go from that information systems consulting firm, I lost a title, okay? I had a title. That title meant something to me. But I didn't lose my talent. What I knew and what I had gained on the job as experience still had value, and that helped me to open up other doors. Why? I didn't go back into information systems consulting, but other firms saw, hey, this guy can actually work for a top branch consulting firm, top-notch consulting firm. He obviously has the intellect, he obviously has the drive, the motivation. We should consider him as well. So it did open many new doors for me, and actually opened the door for me to get into mergers and acquisition analysis. So that was the first lesson that I learned. The second lesson that I learned is basically that networking is crucial, okay? And networking, people don't realize this, is many times more important than what's on your resume. Who you know, not what you know. It's sad to say, but it's absolutely true. So when I was in the industry, I was always looking, and still do, try to build relationships, okay? Because when I needed to look for a job or I needed to look for another position, those were the people that I was able to rely on for help, for opportunities, for support, for connections, and many times even for a interview at another firm. So networking is absolutely important. A lot of people don't like to do it, but it is crucial, especially if you're in the corporate world. It actually works. I mean, take a look at anybody that's successful. They have a good network of people that they can rely on. Another thing that I learned from this one time that I was let go by the information systems consulting firm is that, okay, don't feel that because you have a job or a stable job or what looks like a stable job that you should be so confident. Okay, in other words, confidence isn't really built in comfort. Okay, in other words, once I left that position, okay, at the information systems consulting firm, and I realized that information systems consulting really wasn't who I was. It wasn't what I wanted to do. It wasn't where I was going to be in the future. After that, I had exponential growth, okay? Because I had to look for a new job. I had to look for a new position. I had to interview. It was horrible, a feeling, but I grew more in that time frame of looking for that second job than I did in having those years of predictability at the information systems consulting firm. Now, yes, the information system consulting firm had an outsourcing network and blah blah blah. They weren't really that helpful. That was in those days something just to make you feel good. I had to do a lot of grinding on my own, but I grew a lot. I learned about interviewing. I learned about how to sell myself. I learned about myself as a person. Those number of months that I was working to get a new job taught me a lot about life, about myself, about what I was looking for, and about how to connect with people. Okay, that's another factor that I learned from being let go. I would say another thing that I learned is money goes quick. Okay, you got bills to pay. Money goes quick. Boy, when I realized that check wasn't hitting the account after the first 2 weeks, I didn't even get one of those severance packages that were so big after a while. I never got one of those major severance packages. Suddenly, rent is due, food bills are due, insurance, whatever. Basically, you better have an emergency fund. That is not an option, okay? You got to have an emergency fund. I mean, in those days, we used to say at least 9 months worth of living expenses. I would say in today's world, a lot more. But it's going to allow you to have peace of mind. It's actually the big difference between panicking and peace of mind when life kind of throws you this, curveball, and you get laid off and the partner calls you in and says, goodbye, like that, and you don't know what to do. So you should really have those reserves so that you're not panicking. That's really important to do, to build that reserve and have like funds, money invested that if you have to draw upon them, you can draw upon them because you never know when and if you're going to get let go. And then probably the last thing that I learned from that experience and from each of the experience is that job stability in today's world, it isn't there. You may be feeling on the top of your horse right now and thinking that you are the gift to the world and, oh my God, I work for XYZ Corporation, or I work for this investment bank, or I work for this commercial bank, and you're beating your chest and everything. In one fell swoop, that job can be taken away from you. One fell swoop. So stability is really a myth, okay? Having a job at a major bulge bracket firm is not a safe path. And as I just said, it can disappear in a moment's notice. That manager, that senior manager, that partner can just call you in and say, we're downsizing, have a good day. So what you want to do is you want to prepare for that. A lot of times you might want to try to diversify yourself, maybe have, a side job or a side gig. I always had a side gig of teaching on the side CFA, which is what I eventually went into. So diversify your income, diversify your skills. That's basically called survival. Okay, it's not necessarily just being intelligent, it's surviving. You got to have, your irons in multiple fires, okay? Have, multiple irons in the fire. That's very, very important, as that saying goes. So don't think that you're going to have that job forever. You won't. Don't think that you're necessarily going to be partner, because you're probably not. The chances are pretty small. And keep just treading along, always keeping in mind, diversify your skills, diversify your resources, diversify your income sources. Make sure you have your emergency fund. Remember that your job is not a comfort zone. And also, remember, those people on the job with you, they're not your friends. They're people that are competing with you. Doesn't mean you have to be hostile to them, but they're not your friends, and you should keep a lot of your private life to yourself. Those are the lessons for today. So if you're navigating on your own right now, you could probably identify with a lot of the things that I'm saying. And just because you get laid off from a job doesn't mean that it's the end of your life, or, the end of you're a nobody. Yes, you take a little hit there, just like when you don't pass a CFA exam, but it might lead to better things, because sometimes when a particular door closes, another door opens. And that's the lesson for today. Hope you found this helpful. And if you want, you could send me a note, or you could just, type something underneath the, in the chat box there if you have anything to say. If you'd like to reach out to me or ask me about anything with CFA related, you can check out my website at chalkandboard.org. That's CHALK and AND board, BOARD, chalkandboard.org. And I know what you're going to write, so I'm going to cut to the chase here. Nathan, what was that company that you got laid off from? It was called Anderson Consulting, and it was a company that is now, I think they rolled it into Accenture or something like that. Okay, anyhow, there you go, and there's everything revealed. Have a good day. Bye-bye.